is aimed at advanced users who are creating and writing their own Ajax callbacks in the version 10 grid component. So you can see here I have a simple grid and a button, and we're going to make this button do an Ajax callback. So we'll use action JavaScript to define the JavaScript that makes the callback. So you can see here we open up the on-click event for the button, and we'll add a new action, and we'll add an action called an Ajax callback. And here we can define the callback. We can specify the name of the Xbasic function that will handle the callback, and I'll just call this my callback. Then you can see here that you can also specify that when you make the callback, that data from the current row should be submitted. So that by default is checked. Now this particular grid that we have right now is a read-only grid. So the data that's going to get submitted is just simply going to be the primary key for the current row, not the actual data in the row, because the controls in the row are not edit controls, they're just labels. They're not editable controls. But oftentimes you're going to actually want the data from the current row. So you can see here that there's a checkbox here called compute current row data, and this explains that if you've checked the submit row, the submit data checkbox, and the grid is read only, then what Alpha 5 will do is the server will take the primary key value that got submitted, do a query against the database, and then find the data for all of the fields in the current row and make that available to you. So we're going to turn that on because it's going to help us explain further on how the callback works. So, and then I'm also going to go here into additional data, and just for the purpose of this demonstration, just type in here, and I'll just go here and say my var1 equals alpha and my var2 equals beta, and that additional data is a string, so it needs to be enclosed in single quotes, which is how you define JavaScript strings. So the other thing that I want to point out here is that since the callback function is called my callback, Alpha 5 can create the function prototype for you, which we'll just do here, and then we'll just copy this function prototype to the clipboard, and we'll choose the version that does not have comments. So I'll just go here and copy this to the clipboard, and then click OK, and then save it, and now go over to properties, and I'm going to go here and go to Xbasic function declarations, and I'm going to paste in the function. So this is now the Xbasic function that is going to get called when the user makes an Ajax callback. And the most important part about this function that you need to understand is that the function has this object E passed into it, and so when you write your Ajax callback handler, when you write the Xbasic that goes inside this function, you need to know what's inside E. That's the most important part of writing your function, is to know what data is going to be available to you when you write your event handler. And the easiest way to find out what's in E is simply to use the Alpha 5 debugger. So I'm going to go here and put in a debug1 statement. Now obviously you can't debug in an application running in the actual app server, because the app server runs in a background thread. But the great thing about the working preview feature in Alpha 5 is that working preview runs in the foreground thread, and so you actually can debug using working preview. So let's go ahead now and save this away, and in the next video we'll pick it up and show what happens when we actually make a callback.